In this video, I'm going to tell you about my recent trip to Canada to the grand opening of the MiniWarGaming Bunker, and I'm going to go behind the scenes and ask a bunch of questions to Dave and Matt. This weekend, I traveled up north to Canada. I was invited to attend the grand opening of the MiniWarGaming Bunker in Welland, Ontario. Now, if you're very new to wargaming, perhaps you haven't heard about MiniWarGaming. MiniWarGaming.com, the MiniWarGaming YouTube channel. They're the biggest YouTube channel for MiniWarGaming. Pretty much in all of YouTube, which then means all of the world. So they've been doing it for 12 years, and they just recently bought a building, spent a whole bunch of money to refurbish it, and made it into a wargaming mecca with a big tournament room, a store built into it. They've got 6 different studios now that they can do all of their filming from. They're all themed differently. The Necromunda one is my favorite, as it turns out. Just the look of it is just awesome, I think. Just the facility is astounding. The detail, the artistry, technically. I mean, everything looks like a bunker, so there's these bolts that are sunk every, I don't know, foot or so everywhere throughout the building, and they're all real bolts. These are not like little plastic glue-on bolts. These were all real bolts that they sunk in. So if there's ever, I don't know, a hurricane in, that part of Ontario, that building's not going anywhere, in my opinion. But not only is it an amazing facility for them to film in and for there to be tournaments and all that stuff, but there's also cool places to stay upstairs. For years, people have been traveling to Welland, Ontario to be in the battle reports on the MiniWarGaming YouTube channel. And now, instead of having to stay in some random hotel nearby or whatever, you can now, if you want, stay at the bunker. And they have themed rooms. I got to stay in the Orc Hut. And it was pretty amazing, honestly. The detail was just awesome. A lot of the stuff that's on the walls is from their old Orc studio and their old place. They just kind of repurposed it all and put it into this new Orc Hut, which is, got a bunk bed and the whole deal, all that stuff. One thing that's not Orcy is the bathrooms, which I think is important, frankly. But everything else is very well, kind of designed and just really interesting and all that kind of stuff. So I was there. I got to do a battle report, actually a couple of battle reports with Matt. We hung out with other YouTubers and all kinds of stuff that were also there. It was a really great time, but at one point I got to ask Matt and Dave a bunch of questions, and I asked them the same questions kind of to see how, how much the same they are or how different they are in their answers. And it actually turned out, I think, really interesting. Take a look.
I believe the key to MiniWarGaming's success is attributed to many different factors. I believe that as a combination of consistent hard work and innovation. We are constantly changing. We look very different now than we did a year ago, drastically different than we did 10 years ago. I also think that it's a lot of luck, because to say that it's just, you work really hard and you can get to where you're going to get to, you'll be successful, that's inaccurate. It's definitely luck involved. I also believe that luck can be created, because if you do work hard for a long time, that those opportunities come up, and if you take advantage of those opportunities, then things can happen. And that's certainly something that we have done. We've taken advantage of opportunities that have come up. I also think that it is timing, because we started 12 years ago. We started at a time when YouTube was just barely starting. They haven't been around too long before we started. So our channel grew with YouTube itself, grew with the viewership. And so had we started, let's say we started now, would it take 12 years to get to where we are now? I don't think so. I think it would take a lot longer, to be honest, because of the amount of people that are in the industry and the saturation. But I think it's a combination of many things. And also I think it's transparency as well. I think that's one of the most important things is we try to make ourselves feel knowable. Like when people watch us, they feel like they know us, because we make videos. In addition to the battle report videos that we also make other videos that show us, and they show our personality, and we interact with the viewership. And I think that's very important too, because we never want to become this entity that anyone, that they feel like, they're the man because they are so big and they're out of reach. We always want to feel like we are within reach of our audience.
It's an interesting question because I feel that the key to most businesses' success is a combination of luck, skill, and perseverance, and the ability to adapt. There's a lot of these different things, but luck always feels like a big part of it. And I look back and I see when MiniWarGaming started and how YouTube was brand new. In fact, we were posting our videos on other sites. YouTube was just one of the many sites, Daily Motion and Blip TV, all these different ones. And then all of a sudden, YouTube grew ridiculously. And so that kind of built our business right there, is that YouTube grew and we happened to just ride that wave. Now, luck alone isn't enough in any business. There has to also be hard work and maybe a bit of skill as well, although perseverance is probably the most important one. We tried so many different things. We often called them spaghetti tests, because I've heard that in the industry, that you just try things, and then when your spaghetti is ready, you throw it against the wall, and if it sticks, it's good. If it falls off, well, it's not good. So we were doing all sorts of types of videos, trying all sorts of things in our store. We tried to make flock and tried to sell flock. We tried to make a big thing out of selling green stuff. We made terrain tutorials and painting tutorials and fun videos and infomercials and battle reports, and it was just a constant change and constant checking everything and looking at the analytics and seeing what's working and what's not. The key moments, I would say, where there's a few key moments that you can kind of see the growth of the business. One is when we discovered the importance of battle reports. So when we looked at our analytics and saw that our battle reports always got more views, we started doing more of those. And then we started the vault early on, but we didn't really pay much attention to it. It was just see our videos early kind of thing. And we still had our store. And so the next part was when we shut down our store and focused more on the vault. And that was a significant contribution to our growth. Another part was when we discovered doing narrative campaigns. And now, of course, the next step in our business is the MiniWarGaming Bunker. So there's a lot of those things where you have to analyze what you're doing, and you have to scrap the things that are taking up more time than they're worth, and then focus on the things that are working. But like I said, you don't know what those are. You can't ask the audience what they want. I think it's Henry Ford who is at least quoted to have said, if I had asked the people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And they didn't know anything about cars, right? So how would they know they wanted one? So it's hard to know what to do. It's hard to decide what it is that's the next thing, and to keep being innovative, because it just by definition, it means always stepping into the unknown. But there's no business that's going to survive without hard work and constant adaptation. Whatever your initial idea is, anybody says 10 years from now, that idea will have morphed significantly, if not been abandoned altogether. And that's what you need to do. This is all the crazy parts of MiniWarGaming. I have to really just hand over to Dave and give him the credit for that. He's the visionary when it comes to those things. He's willing to really take the crazy leaps. He's the one that wanted to make a full-fledged fantasy movie, which I was like, you know what? Sure, go ahead and do it. I'm just going to keep, running this part of the business while you go off. And he's a dreamer. Very emotional person. I think this is why we work together so well. That I focus a lot more on the logical side of things, and he's much more emotional. And that is not a good versus bad. Those are just two sides of a very important relationship. Much like, honestly, I often compare it to my relationship with my wife, that we are very different people, and that's why it works. If we were the same, then what's the point? You don't need a partner who's just as good at you as everything and bad at all the stuff you're bad at. You need somebody who pulls you in a different direction, who's a check and balance. And so he's the one that always wanted to do this. He talked about it for a long time. And I'm always like, yeah, one day, when we have millions of dollars that we don't know what to do with. And but just through this constant dreaming and doing his movies, he made more contacts and networking in the industry. And eventually, it just, once again, happenstance, happened to be at a film festival for the movie that he made with one of the people who helped produce it, and one of the executive producers. And just pitched him the idea, not to try to get him to invest, but they were just talking. And the other guy, Hunter, turns to him and says, yeah, let's do this. And it just so happened that Hunter was in a position to be able to do it. If it was a year earlier, Hunter wouldn't have been in that position. And probably a year later, he wouldn't have been in that position either. Just some changes in his life that opened this up. And so once again, that serendipity, that luck, if you will. But it's not like... It's when it all comes together. He had been dreaming about this for a while, and then that kind of came in. And so I was skeptical at first. I'm like, yeah, there's this guy that I don't know about, and he wants to just fully fund this. I'm like, yeah, sure, yeah, Dave, yeah, that'll happen, of course. Yeah, we'll pursue it, sure, whatever. What's harming there is they're pursuing, and the guy eventually backs out. And then all of a sudden the building was purchased. And then all of a sudden plans were drawn up. And all of a sudden I was meeting... Well, of course I had met with the guy before this and grilled him and made sure that I liked him and that we would be able to work together well. But no, this is Dave's dream. Now that we're here, I am super happy and super excited. I am looking forward to doing all the things that the bunker entails, running events. Just the new studios alone are wonderful to film in, and the offices and everything. It's so much nicer. We got out of an old dingy building and got into a nice newly renovated one, and we're hoping that we can provide an even better experience to wargamers out there who are willing to make the trip and come on in.
In terms of the bunker and why I wanted to do this next step and why we wanted to do this next step is really ultimately it was 4 years ago I had this thought come in my mind. Our guests that come from all over the world, we book 6 to 12 months in advance so people can participate in the videos with us, and they were staying in nearby hotels. And so I had this idea, what if we partnered with an Airbnb that was close by? And then I thought, well, what if we changed this Airbnb to be themed like the studios? And then I thought, well, what if we just had that Airbnb be a part of us, be attached to us somehow? And then it grew from there, and we eventually had the opportunity to do this. We developed a relationship with an investor, a good friend of ours, Hunter, and we were able to do this. So it started with a small idea, and it just kept talking to enough people until eventually the right person came along and was able to help us and fast track us. Because in my mind, it was 10 years down the road that something like this would happen. And it wasn't even this. It was just rooms. It was an Airbnb attached to the studios. It wasn't everything else that is here at the bunker. It wasn't the tournament hall or the escape rooms or the gaming store. It wasn't all that. That was never originally part of the idea. It just kind of happened organically. So now that we have the bunker, it is up, we had the grand opening, it is a thing now. It's a massive machine that is running. The next step would be to develop programs and to develop events that people can participate in, that they can come here and they can experience. And those events are in the form of campaigns, and they can be anywhere from a kill team campaign to 40K AOS tournaments to specialized immersive campaigns. And overall, it's really about the experience of the guests that come in person. This would all be in addition to the video content that we make. So that's our mainstay. It's always going to be the meat and potatoes of what we do, but the in-person experience is something that we are going to focus on and try to make it an awesome experience for those who arrive and who they'll just never forget. Like, that's what we want to create. We want to make this place that's a second home for wargamers and a destination for everyone in the world to experience.
Well, that's hard to say. The bunker has occupied so much of my thoughts. There are so many different directions that you can go in the wargaming industry. I know at one time we dabbled with making our own miniatures. I don't have any desire to do that right now, but I also know that that's not a bad way to go business-wise. We are working on, through the bunker, just really trying to ramp it up. This is going to be all-consuming. This is going to take all of our time for the next few years, and just getting it going. It's going to take time to get it off the ground. Figuring out, we're kind of back to square one, figuring out now what events do people want us to run. Because we're not just going to run the Saturday tournaments. We're talking about week-long events all the time. And that is, there are challenges there, obviously, because most people are not available during the week. And so we're looking at people taking time off and coming in and running these constantly. People do that for big special occasions, but we're talking about running them year-round. And so this is going to consume a lot of our time, and just working on that. What's next after this would be a bigger bunker with more rooms and more space and more studios. Maybe building one in the second location. These are all just, I don't know. People always ask, before the bunker, people would say, what are you planning on doing? When are you planning on doing this campaign? When are you planning on covering this? And I'm like, if it's more than a month away, I have no idea. Now, I have to say if it's more than 6 months away, because clearly we have to be a little more organized than we typically are. So to be honest, I have no idea. What I want to see us the bunker really take off, and that open up areas in the kind of event management and hospitality. I'd love one day to dabble in jumping into our own IP, whether it's making miniatures or board games or anything like that. Who knows?
Well, I want different variants of Land Raiders for Chaos Space Marines. I think that would be a very good thing. But on a more serious note, I think it would be good if Games Workshop developed their own tournament system that the entire industry could follow. If they develop a standard that a point system or whatever. In fact, I honestly think that's eventually going to come. I think that that would help to integrate the everyday player into tournament campaign type of player. Because myself, I'm not a tournament player. And I think if they developed a large system that catered to the friendly gamer, I want to say, because I'm personally not a competitive player, but I like the idea of a big tournament, and so that's something that I'd like to see change. That's a big thing that would drastically change the industry.
That is a hard question to answer because I don't see myself as a creative type. As much as I create narrative campaigns and we create content, it's very formulaic to me about copy and paste ideas that have worked in the past, tweak them, all that kind of stuff. So I'm very reactionary when it comes to the industry. So all of a sudden Games Workshop comes up with a big new release, well then we're going to make sure we kind of adapt to whatever that is and try to cover that and to play that. The industry has been growing in so many good ways and some bad ways, but like any industry, that's going to happen. I'm excited for the technology. I love the fact that over the past few years, we've seen a lot of small companies able to produce plastic miniatures in high quality and better terrain. It's something I've been really excited about. But in the industry as a whole, I don't know, actually. I'm just going to sit back and kind of react to what happens and try to take part in whatever comes. But there's not a lot of things that I can think of off the top of my head. Now, if you're asking me more like specifics, like in the Tyranid army in Warhammer 40k, what would you like to see change? I have ideas there. Or how would you change the Age of Sigmar rules? Well, I can give you all sorts of ideas of what I'd like to see. But if we're talking about the industry, I really like where it's going. I like the more open nature of Games Workshop with their Warhammer community. I love the technologies. 3D printing has been tremendously awesome, and we're just starting with that. I don't think it's going to take over the industry, but I think it's going to be an awesome supplement for terrain and for models, and just to make that accessible to so many more companies that want to make models and terrain and want to enter the industry, which is always good for the end consumer. It can be hard for the companies because that's a lot more competition, but that's always good for the end consumer. It makes better products and just makes a better experience. So I love going to conventions and seeing all the new stuff. I just remember going to conventions 5-6 years ago. It looked different, incredibly different. Everything was metal miniatures and low quality terrain, and now you go out there and everything's plastic, and metal's fine, but it's just nice to see that accessibility in technology, because that low cost of entry allows more creative minds to get into it, and that gives us so much more fun to have in the industry. I would say that when we needed to shut down our store, back when it just wasn't doing well enough, the revenue was there, but the money was being all tied up in inventory, and we were seeing success in the MiniWarGaming Vault, which is our paid members area for our videos. And we finally just said, you know what, enough is enough. We need to free up that money and cross our fingers, because the Vault was not making enough money at that time to cover the overhead of the business. Of course, some of the overhead would go down by not having a store, but the biggest cost was the wages of all the content producers we wanted to have, and the support staff, and the customer support, and the video editing, and everything else that we were doing. And so that leap, I would say by far, has been the biggest success of MiniWarGaming. Within 6 months, the community had come together so much that within 6 months we were all of a sudden in the black, which we had not been for the first 6 years of our business. We were out of debt for the first time. We were making money in such a way that there was actually money in the bank. Before that, it was a daily task for me to go into the bank account, figure out how much I could put onto the Visa so it would pay off the invoices without taking too much money out of the bank, which was needed for wages. And do I need to skip a paycheck this time just to make sure there's enough there? And after that, I haven't experienced that since. There's been ups and downs, but all those ups and downs have been in the black, which is wonderful, wonderful blessing that we've had. The community has been fantastic. When we shut down the store, the response from the community, within a single week, we grew the vault by 40%. And then, like I said, within 6 months, we were able to function. And that has been so awesome, because I'd always wanted to really be able to focus on it, but our money was always tied up elsewhere and we couldn't invest in it. I thought this was an opportunity. You see things like Netflix were coming into more power, and a lot of these streaming services, like, people were hungry for that kind of on-demand content that they would be willing to pay for. And so that alone, there's lots of other little successes that you can see in the growth of the business. And hopefully this one right here, in 5 years, I'll be looking back on it and being like, oh yeah, that is the biggest change to our business. But I can't say that yet, because we just started.
So over the years of our business, the success that I'm most happy with is the development of the battle report, that our battle report, not the battle report in general. We were not the first ones to create a battle report, but we were the first ones to create our type of battle report. And at first, what we did is we did recap bat reps. So at the end of each player turn, we would just recap what happened. And then from there, we went to recording every dice roll. But at first, we didn't do it the way we do it, where we call out every action as it's happening. We would strip the audio and we would do a voiceover afterwards in post-production. And that was very difficult, because it's a combination of having to make it engaging, and we would have to, first off, know everything that was happening, and then we would have to say it quickly, and then we would have to try to not mess up our words. And it was a very challenging thing. So I know Matt was good at that. He was able to be good at that because Matt's a genius, and he would never admit to this, but he's just a genius. But for me, I thought, well, that's not something I can do. So what I'm going to do is just not do that. I'm going to do it my way, which is keeping the audio from the game itself. And I also thought, it actually gets the real-time reaction of not just me, but my opponent, and it feels more natural. And so that's what I did. And then so we combined those two styles to eventually become what it is now. So record the whole thing, and then we keep the real-time reactions of both the players as it's happening, because there's a certain level of excitement and life to the battle report that you can't get afterwards if you take out that audio. Now, you can do your best, but when there's an organic reaction to a dice roll, if something goes really poorly or really well, you want to capture that right away. And so I would say that's something I'm most proud of, and I think that made a huge impact on us and in the industry, just because of when we started it and what it's become. It's become our meat and potatoes of our content and everything that we do. So if I wasn't doing what I do, what would I be doing? If I wasn't a YouTuber, well, I think I would be a YouTuber still, and I'd probably do something related to movies, whether it's a movie critique channel or a review channel or a skit comedy type of parody channel. It would something to do with movies and something to do with creativity, because I know that I would make a very bad employee. I would just drive any employer nuts. And so I'm fortunate to be where I am, because I'm able to use this as a creative outlet to kind of just do projects and build things and have big ideas. And so, yeah, that's what I would be doing. Either that or landscaping still, because I started landscaping. That's what I did many years ago. I started a landscaping business. I really, really hated it. And I was lucky enough to partner up with Matt and start this business with him. But yeah, that's what I'd be doing.
When I was a teenager in high school, I fell in love with computer programming. I loved designing games, programs, software. I just loved that. I ended up going to university for that. It was during university that I got into marketing, consulting, business coaching, and eventually MiniWarGaming got started right after I finished university. but I had gone for computer science or for computer programming. So if none of my businesses ever took off, because I had a business before this in marketing consulting that actually was profitable too. It funded Mini Wargaming. If that hadn't taken off, if this hadn't taken off, I think I'd be a computer programmer. I would enjoy that. But there's always been a part of me that's never been satisfied working for somebody else. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just I just like the control. Not security. Sure doesn't give you more security. I don't know if anybody says one has more security over. Well, owning your own business is frightening when it comes to that, especially when you're raising a family with a bunch of little kids. But I think I'd always be looking for a way to run my own business. My dad is an entrepreneur. He has his contracting business for the past 30 some odd years. And so I've always looked up to that and seen the hard work that it takes and the motivation that he has to have on a regular basis. But I've always wanted that. But as a fallback, it was always computer programming. So that was the career I thought I was going to get into.
Cool.
I don't play miniature wargaming outside of work, partly because I don't want to, because I get to do it so much that I'd rather do other things, but partly just because of time. I have 4 kids, 9 and under. So my 9-year-old boy, he's fine. He wants to play so badly. We're starting to actually, the week of the filming of this interview right here, we're actually starting our first D&D campaign with him actually as a player. I've done lots of board games with him. We've played even with some miniatures. We've done some Shadespire or some Blitz Bowl, things like that. But he's just still too young to fully grasp the complexities of Warhammer 40k or Age of Sigmar or any of the other games. And my other kids, of course, are way too young for it. I think I'm pretty sure my 7-year-old daughter will get into it though. She loves painting. She loves all the crafting part. So she'll at least get into the hobby part. But outside, I'm just so busy. They have very busy lives with all their commitments. Very active with my church, and so that takes up a lot of time as well. So if it wasn't for this business, I don't think I'd be into miniature wargaming. I'd be into role playing because that's a lot easier to pull off. But miniature wargaming, I don't think I'd have the opportunity to play. I would be too busy and too broke because kids are expensive. So I'm quite happy that I get to do this as a living.
I do get to play minis when I'm not at work. I get to play with my kids, which is super cool. It's fun to see their faces when we're playing games, we're interacting on the tabletop. We play this game at home. It's called Turbo. It's a game that I made up. We use minis, and we use the gaming mats, and we use the terrain pieces, and so they are immersed. They are another generation of wargamers being cropped up in my very own house, and so that's a very good feeling. That's not something I had growing up. I didn't know that this existed when I was a kid, and so that to me feels really good. That to me, my son in particular, he said, I said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" He said, "I want to do what you do, Daddy. I want to be a YouTuber. I want to do mini wargaming." So I think that's pretty cool.